as we get ready for Christmas, and there's a lot that goes into that phrase, and most of you know, as you think of getting ready for Christmas, you think of all the decorations, of climbing into the attic, of pulling out the decorations you hated last year, of you you hate the thought of having to go after the Christmas lights that you just threw into the box thinking you would come back after Christmas vacation and untangle them, and you pull them out and realize it's been a year and you never touched them again. And you go through the whole process of pulling them out and stringing them up and doing the ornaments and the star, and you put the little greenery wherever the greenery goes, and the little fake poinsettias and the wreath, and which, this is just an aside, we put a wreath on one of our exterior doors, and the boys and I walked out that door the other day, and a little bird had made its nest in that door and flew into our house. So that was a fun adventure through our Christmas decorations there. But one of the Christmas decorations that we do in preparing for Christmas is we have these little wise men. We don't do Elf in the Shelf at our house. Not that we're against Elf on the Shelf, but that came along after we had already started a lot of other things, and I didn't want to add just one more thing to the deal. So we had these little wise men that are part of a nativity set. I'm not sure where the rest of the nativity set is. I just know where the wise men are. But we got the wise men, all right? We lost Jesus, but we got the wise men. When the wise men make it to Jesus, they make it to a different nativity set. The wise men are a lot larger than the other people in that nativity set, but maybe they were giants, I don't know. And so we have these three wise men, and they've got a camel. And what we do is every day leading up to Christmas, after we pull them out of the tub that's been down in the shed for a year, is I will hide the wise men somewhere in the house. The idea is they're looking for Jesus. They're seeking Jesus. And so the kids have to run through the house to try to find wherever the wise men are. And usually, in my thinking, I give each of them a backstory. I don't tell anybody this. I'm really exposing my heart here. And there's always one wise man who's kind of lazy, and he's always laying down. There's always one wise man who's trying to climb a little bit higher than the other one, and there's one who's trying to keep the camel under control because he's always trying to run away. And now the boys know it. They'll find out. They haven't found the wise men since, I hit them Thursday. They're in a good spot now. Well, we've been gone a couple days, but they were searching the house Thursday morning, couldn't find them. Searching the house yesterday, couldn't find them. Searching I'm proud of the spot I got them in now, y'all. The wise men you're good. But they're in a spot, and they're looking for Jesus. They're always trying to find Jesus. And, the first day I hit them this year, I hit them in the Christmas tree, like in the Christmas tree, way up in the middle of it. And a couple of the boys that morning went to go look for the wise men, and they were looking. And at several different times in the morning, they went and they actually looked in the Christmas tree, but they didn't see them. They were looking right where they were, but they didn't see them. They looked above, they looked below, looked around. They weren't there. They finally found them later, but they looked and didn't see that they were there. And that's something we're going to see today is wise men coming to try to find Jesus, the promised Messiah. And there's another guy that we're going to see, another character in this story, who should have been looking for Jesus, had him right in front of him the whole time, but never saw him. And that's as we prepare for what's going to be coming in the coming of Jesus. Open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2. If you're using a Bible that is on the pew rack there in front of you, it's on page 809. It is the very first page of Matthew, 809, very first page of the New Testament. It'll also be on the screens. The scripture's also in the bulletin there on the back side in the YouVersion Bible app under the events section. You can find it all there. We've got the scene, and it's unique the way we're looking at this Christmas story this year because we're starting with the wise men. Usually, as you talk about the Christmas story, you do the wise men last because they're the last ones to show up. But we're going to flip it a little bit, and we're going to start with the wise men first. Look at Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." So they've been looking and anticipating Jesus. These wise men, the literal word there in the original language is magi. We're going to look at that actually over the next couple weeks. I hope you're up on social media, or you should subscribe to us on YouTube because they're all going to be on YouTube too. 3 times each week over the next 2 weeks, we're going to put out little videos about Christmas. And one of them is going to be studying the Magi and who they were, where they came from, why they're important. They're actually in the Old Testament. We're going to look at that. And so you need to hit that up. Facebook, YouTube. YouTube will be a really good spot, but hit that up this week and next week. But these guys, these wise men, these Magi, came from the east to Jerusalem. They were following a star. You know, that's been displayed in all kinds of ways and all kinds of movies. You know, see a star moving across the sky. These guys were looking, anticipating the coming of the Messiah. Something was going to happen. And they saw a sign in the sky, a star that should not have been there, moved to a certain spot where it should not have moved, and they followed it. And it came to rest over Jerusalem. They made their way to Jerusalem. They walk into town, and they begin to say, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews?" Now, it doesn't say who they're talking to here at this point. In a minute, they're going to be talking to Herod the king. But right now, they're just walking through the streets. The wise men, the Magi, with their entourage, running around the streets saying, "Where is he who's been born King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews? We saw his star. He's here." And you know, we don't know how they're dressed. We don't know how big their entourage was. We don't know all that stuff. We don't really even know how many there were. We just know there were a few of them. And they came, and they're causing a big disturbance in the city. As they're running around the city, probably have their servants running around the city as well. And they're asking everybody they can ask. Because they think if the King of the Jews has been born, then all the Jews in the city should know that he's there. And so they're running around. "Where's the King of the Jews? Where's the King of the Jews?" Knocking on every door, going throughout the marketplace, going through first century Walmart. "Where is he? Where's the King of the Jews?" And nobody knows what they're talking about as they're running around. They saw a sign that Jesus had arrived. They saw a sign that Jesus was around this general location, but no one else had noticed the sign. And the thing about that is, in truth, a lot applies to our lives, is that signs of Jesus are everywhere, and we don't often see it. Even at Christmas time. I don't know if you know this, but all the symbolism at Christmas points to Jesus. The Christmas tree itself was originally chosen as a sign of Jesus because it pointed to the heavens. And the German Christians, the new German Christians, would bring Christmas trees in and hang them from the ceiling with the point pointed up because it pointed to Jesus, helped them remember Jesus. And so everything we got going on points singularly to Jesus. Signs of Jesus are everywhere. But the thing about that is that Jesus is always seen by those who are looking for him. Jesus is always seen by those who are looking for him. Nobody in Jerusalem knew Jesus was even there because none of them were looking for him. It took these guys coming this great distance to where they were. Some people say they traveled over 1,000 miles to get here, that nobody knew that Jesus was even there, but these guys came looking for him, and they would find him because they were looking. And if we look at our own lives, Jesus is everywhere. Evidence of Jesus is everywhere in our lives if we would simply look for it. Look for it. Look around. I can see it in my children, in the way they respond to each other, just in their creation itself. We can see it in just looking out the window. We can see symbolism. We can see creation. We can see Jesus' hand in his provision in our lives if we would simply look for it. You see what you look for. Look at verse 3. When Herod the king heard this, so word's finally gotten up to Herod. He's the king of the region, of that area. He hears about these guys stirring up Jerusalem, looking for a new king, and he's the king. And he prided himself on some relation to Jewishness. And so he tried to be as Jewish as possible. And he hears about people looking for a new king of the Jews. That gets him a little paranoid, and he was already extremely paranoid. This guy was so paranoid, he started killing off his own children, afraid that they were going to come after him. He even killed off his favorite wife, thinking she was conspiring with one of his favorite sons, that they were going to kill him. So don't kill off your favorite wife this week, thinking if you have a favorite wife, then we need to talk. Your only wife should be your favorite wife. But he was a very paranoid guy. And so when he hears about these people in town looking for a new king, that paranoia begins to stir up. And he calls in his secret police, and he's trying to figure out what's going on here. So back to verse 3. King Herod hears about this. He's troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So Herod calls in all the smart people, and tries to figure out where the Messiah is supposed to be born. Now, understand, again, Herod prided himself on being up on Jewish lingo and on Jewish things. He tried to be, King Jew. He tried to be everything. He called himself at times the King of the Jews. He tried to be the man. And he didn't know where the Messiah was to be born. So he calls in all these researchers, all these guys. Where is the Messiah supposed to be born? These people are in town trying to find him in Jerusalem. Where is he really supposed to be born? He's researching really, though, from frustrated expectation instead of joyful expectation. He wasn't joyfully anticipating the coming of the Messiah, even in all the Jewishness he prided himself on. He was trying to find where the Messiah was so that he could kill him. Because he didn't want some new king coming in on his authority, some new king coming in and taking away some of his control. And so he's researching where the Messiah is going to be born out of frustration, out of paranoia, out of confusion, and not joy. He should have been overjoyed at the arrival of the Son of God, the King of the Jews, but he was not. There was not 1 ounce of joy in that news within Herod. There was really a fear of change, a fear of the unknown, a fear of losing control of his authority, of his power. And so he chose fear over potential frustration instead of choosing joy. He chose fear. He chose not to be joyful. His joy wasn't stolen from him. He chose not to choose joy. Because in truth, nothing can steal your joy. Nothing can steal it. Nothing can steal your joy. We either let our joy go or we lock it down. Joy can't be stolen. We either release it by choosing not to go with it, or we can lock it down and hang on to it. Because you hold the keys to being joyful or joy empty. You hold the keys to being joyful or joy empty. It relies on where you put your focus. It relies on where you put your attention. It relies on your own spirit and your own mind. Jesus brings full joy when he comes into your life. And if you allow it to run away from you, it's not because something came and robbed your joy. It's because you pushed it out in favor of something else. So Herod chose not to be joyful. And so the scribes and the Pharisees, the smart people, here are the people Herod went after, the chief priests, the scribes. Verse 5, they tell him the Messiah is to be born in Bethlehem of Judea. For so it is written by the prophet, "And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For you shall come, or from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Now Bethlehem was a small city, a little suburb. It wasn't famous for any reason. It was tiny. If history repeated itself as a tiny little suburb, it would deteriorate and disappear eventually. But something was about to happen in Bethlehem that would change its destiny. Bethlehem, as the suburb, was about to surpass the city that it was nearby. Because introducing Jesus astronomically elevates renown. It changes destinies. And so Jesus was going to be introduced into the life of the city of Bethlehem, and Bethlehem would be forever changed. If Jesus had never come to Bethlehem, you people would never know its name. It would have faded into obscurity in history. Some tiny town of some tiny nation that they had at some point in the past. But history's about to change here. Introducing Jesus changes the future. Bethlehem moves from obscurity to outstanding, from the bench warmer to the starter, from a flyover city to a destination city. Introducing Jesus escalates your growth rate. Bethlehem exploded from this point forward. Everything changed for Bethlehem because Jesus was introduced into its context. Introducing Jesus escalates your growth rate. And so Herod has consulted the wise men of his advisory council. They tell him it's in Bethlehem that Jesus is going to be born. And then verse 7, Herod sends out his secret police to bring the wise men to him. Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. So now he begins to pursue the Jesus who came, the Messiah who came, the Son of God who came. He begins to pursue how he can find out where this Messiah is. And Herod's not a dummy. I mean, he knows, okay, well, they say he's going to be born in Bethlehem. These guys said they were watching signs. It was a sign. He came. And so he tries to figure out when the sign showed up to try to figure out how old the Messiah is, so that he can go, and what he's eventually going to actually do is he's going to issue a law that every baby under 2 years old gets killed. Can you imagine that law being passed? Well, it was. He had absolute authority to do that. So a lot of people didn't like it. Almost every person didn't like it, including the actual Roman guards who had to go and exercise the law. They didn't like it, most of them. But Herod is going to issue that law because it's his understanding that a new king has been born, possibly, who is 2 or under, and he doesn't want his authority at risk. His paranoia coming up again. So he pursues this assumption he's been given that the Messiah, somebody's coming to usurp him, and it's going to cause all kinds of trouble in his own spirit, in his own life. And we often know, I don't know if you do this, I know I do this, pursue less than joyful assumptions about different things in life. And it really messes with you. It messes with your mind, it messes with your heart, it messes with your relationships when you pursue less than joyful assumptions about anyone and everyone. Because pursuing less than joyful assumptions about someone else creates a hidden joy leakage in your soul. When you begin to pursue in your mind and your thought processes, or in the rabbit hole of the news or news feeds or the comment feed, you start going through and are pursuing a less than joyful assumption about somebody. Maybe it's an assertion somebody makes online, and you begin to follow it from this link to this link to this comment to over here, and you start following the conversation through the comments, trying to find out what happened to this person. And it's definitely not a joyful assertion that person's making about this other person, and you're just trying to find out a rumor or a gossip about what actually happened and what's going on. But what we don't realize is in doing that, our joy is leaking out of our soul. Because we're forcing our joy out and sucking in all this negativity, and it's poisoning us, but we don't see it. We don't see it. We don't sense it. Because everybody does it. That's why we absorb all the news we can, and it really makes us sour and angry when we should be filled with joy. We should be giving joy to as many as possible instead of allowing it to run away from us, pushing it out, forcing it out, and locking the door behind it as we pursue other things, because we pursue less than joyful assumptions. We should be spilling joy onto others, not allowing it to leak out of us. Now, there's a difference between joy leakage and joy spillage. Leakage happens when we have a hole, that we have forced a hole to force the joy out a way that it's not supposed to go. Spillage happens when we have so much joy, it's just bouncing off of us into other people. Not that it's making the joy we have any less. We have so much that it's spilling out of us onto everyone around us. We can't help it. It's just happening. Somebody bumps into us, they get joy on them. This morning, Reagan was with me this morning. The boys take turns coming with me early and getting, some things, situated here and there. And we were getting the video stuff set up in the video room. He bumped into me and my tea spilled down his back because I had the cup so full. Because my cup was so full of tea, when he bumped into me, he got some on him. That's how it should be with joy. We've got so much in us that if somebody bumps into us, it just spills onto them and can't help it. Reagan said, "Can you see it? Is it on me? Let's get it off." That's not what we want with other people. We want them to get the joy, to have it soak in. That's what I told him. It's soaked in. It's gone. You can't get rid of it. It's there. We want the joy to soak into everybody else because they've bumped into us, and we've got so much of it. We need to pursue joy instead of allowing joy to leak, causing a dwindling supply. Look at verse 8 here. Herod had summoned these wise men secretly. They come to him. Verse 8, it says, he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found it, bring me word that I may come too and worship him." Now you can know, Herod's a bad guy. And he's doing that fake bad guy thing. Yeah, just go and find him. I want to come and worship him too. I want to bring him presents. I want to, elevate him, give him my throne. They should have immediately thought, well, this guy's crazy. There's no way. I mean, he just killed off 3 of his kids, and he wants to come, and no, that's not going to happen. But they weren't thinking that in the moment. As we're going to see in a minute, they're thinking about something else. And so he says, bring me word, come and tell me. And so the wise men make a mental note, okay, when we find him, we're going to come and tell Herod. So he can celebrate. Maybe he'll write a letter to Caesar, and they'll put him in charge of the whole Roman Empire. And so Herod says, go, find him, come and tell me. Verse 9, after listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over a place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. So the star begins to move again, goes to Bethlehem, rests over the place where the child was. We find out he's in a house. Mary and Joseph and Jesus have been living in Bethlehem for a couple of years. They've got a little house there now, and they didn't live in the stable for 2 years. We all see the nativity scenes with the shepherds and Mary and Joseph, baby Jesus, and the wise men. Well, the wise men were latecomers. They weren't really there then. But Mary and Joseph have a house in Bethlehem now, and the wise men show up. Or they're on their way. But notice something here. This really caught my attention in preparing this that really hadn't caught my attention before. They went on their way. When they saw the star, verse 10, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. This word exceedingly is just an incredible word. It means like the highest point of intensity. The highest point of intensity. You can't get any higher than this. This is as big as it gets. Exceedingly, they rejoiced exceedingly. So it's as though, literally this might say, they rejoiced with the most possible passion, having the absolute greatest of joys. But notice, they rejoice with this incredible amount of joy before they even see Jesus. They just see the sign pointing to Jesus, and they rejoice. That brings them the joy. Their joy is explosive. The exact wording, they cannot have any more joy in them. It is impossible. Do you know anybody like that? A lot of times, when I've come across people like that, they get really annoying really fast. I don't know about you, but that's my thought with them sometimes. But these guys, all of them, they're just exploding with joy just at seeing the sign pointing to Jesus. They're rejoicing at being simply directed towards Jesus. And so imagine for a second, if that's the joy they experienced at just being pointed to Jesus, what did they have when they walked into the room and there he was? I can't even imagine what that was like. If they are this way, just seeing the sign, there he is. There's the house. There's Jesus' house right there. And if they were knocking door to door in Jerusalem looking for him, and here they are, exceedingly great joy at just seeing the place where he is. I imagine these guys running, absolutely throwing decorum and PC to the wind, and they are running full on to get there as quick as possible. Explosive joy as they get there. They're on the way, you see, because Jesus produces a joy within us beyond the capacity of our experiences. Jesus produces a joy within us beyond the capacity of our experiences. We may have had joyful experiences in the past or happy experiences in the past, and we think, well, I just want to get that happiness back, that sense of joy back. But Jesus can take us beyond anything we've ever experienced before, even if that kind of joy came from him in the past. He can take us to a whole nother level that we never even thought could be possible on this plane of existence. He can take us there. Jesus can take us beyond our own capacity. And so these guys bust in to the house. Verse 11, and going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It almost reads like that's an aside. That's a byword. They run in with all this joy. They see Jesus. They see Mary. They fall on their face and they worship there in the entryway to the house. And as they're worshiping, oh yeah, we brought gifts, and they bring in the gifts. And they give these gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. Verse 12, being warned in a dream, not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. They were joyful, exceedingly great joy. They chose joy. Herod didn't choose joy. He chose something else. We must choose joy. Choose it. Actively choose joy. Now, don't raise your hand, but I want you to mentally think of a face of someone in your life who is a sourpuss. See the face? If you can't think of anybody, you need a mirror. Everybody's got them. Everybody's got them. They resonate joylessness. Almost like joy suckers. Like they walk into a room, it's like, oh, they're sucking my joy out. Oh, it's just, oh. And you leave and you're just kind of, oh man, life is terrible. We're all dying. It's just bad. And the world's going to pot and the church is dying. And why can't I just die now? May a hailstone fall on my head like Joshua chapter 10 and this just be the end. And you know those people. Like you just run into them and you immediately feel worse. Not even if you talk to them. You see them across Walmart, right? You're walking to the juice and you see them come in the door and you're like, oh no! Like, I've got 20 things left. I will come back in an hour, and you just kind of sneak by the avocados and slip out. I'll come back at a different time. And that's not, obviously it's not how it should be. We shouldn't be running from each other. The thing is, we should have so much joy that it fills the emptiness in the joyless people's lives. The amount of joy we have should not be removed by someone else with a joy vacuum taking it all from us. Joy should permeate into everyone's life because we must choose it. Even in the conversations that would rob us of joy, remember, we may think that, but it doesn't really rob us of joy. We're choosing not to hold on to our joy. Even in those conversations, we still need to choose it. But the thing is, in preparing this message, I began to experiment a little bit in trying to choose joy at every moment, at every second. I even wrote in my journal this week, it was Monday, I think. It's like, I've been doing this joy experiment for about 4 hours, and it's been going great. But you know what happened in that 4 hours? I talked to 2 people. In the next hour, I talked to about 12. And it wasn't the same experience I had just had. Joy, though, I had mistaken it in my own mind. And I fear a lot of us do this. I had confused joy with the emotion of happiness. And so in the moment, in those conversations, that very first conversation after that first 4-hour stretch, and I could feel the joy just being sucked out of my eyeballs. What I was experiencing in my head as I began to say, choose joy right now in the moment, wasn't choose joy. In truth, if there was a spiritual translator, it would be choose happiness. You need to choose to be happy right now. But that's not what joy is. Joy isn't happiness, not at all, not even in the slightest sense, because joy is more than that. We cheapen joy when we equate it with happiness, and that's what I was doing. In this experiment that I've been doing all week, been choosing joy, been working on it. Now, I'm definitely not an expert. And Thursday, we went to Houston at the end of this week. My dad is a music minister down there. Went to see his Christmas program on Friday night. And it's like a straight shot from our house to my parents' house. It's like 6.5 hours, something like that. We were anticipating taking a couple of stops, got a baby, got to do the whole thing. Well, it took us over 9 hours to get there on Thursday. And there was a lot of experimenting going on with choosing joy as we're journeying down the road. As we're sitting in that McDonald's parking lot somewhere outside of 610 in Houston, and just the rain was pouring down, and Ethan was doing his deal, and the kids were doing their deal, and I think we were there maybe an hour and 45 minutes. It was an experience. But I was doing my best not to choose happiness, but joy. And I came across something that really shifted the way I think. Because we can decide to be happy all day long, but we can't decide to be joyful. We can't. You can't force joy. Because joy isn't something you can choose. It is a residual. It is an after effect of something else. It's a side effect of something else. Happiness is simply a feeling, an emotion. But joyfulness is a state of being. And it can only be achieved as the side effect of a singular, intentional, moment-by-moment decision of choosing Jesus. You can only choose joy by choosing Jesus. Joy only comes when you choose Jesus. And what we see in Scripture time and again, even in the lives of these wise men, these magi, is joy only truly came when they were directed to the exact spot Jesus was. Joy only comes when Jesus comes. Anything else is imitation joy. It's not joy, it's happiness, faking like it's joy. Joy is deeper because joy, if we truly have joy and we are given it from Jesus, the moment we receive Him, it is in the fullness of the Holy Spirit in our lives. When we truly have joy, it cannot be taken away from us. Happiness can be stolen all the time by a comment, even by just a tone, by like I said a minute ago, seeing that one person in Walmart. Your happiness can leave you in a second, but joy can't. You can choose to remove joy by removing Jesus from the center of your focus, from the center of your life. You say, I don't have a joyful household. My first question is Jesus in your household? I don't have a joyful marriage. Is Jesus there? Do you have a joyful demeanor, spirit? See, what I had to realize this week is choosing happiness is hard. It is hard. But choosing joy is impossible outside of Jesus. And so what you have to do is moment by moment, as situations arise, choose Jesus. Choose Jesus, even in anticipation of something coming, maybe tomorrow. You're anticipating a situation. You're anticipating something coming tomorrow. Do a preemptive action and begin to choose Jesus today. Begin to choose Jesus in the morning, getting ready for what's coming so that you don't force your joy out by choosing frustration, by choosing something else. Choose Jesus and watch the joy maintain or increase its level in your life. It will change everything. Change everything. And I tell you right now, even the elation you feel on Christmas Day, seeing your kids or your grandkids and their faces when they open those presents, that's not joy. That's happiness. That's great. That's phenomenal. That's incredible. My main love language is gifts, and I love that. That is what it's all. I mean, man, open the gift and they see the face, and man, that is it for me. That's the pinnacle, seeing that. Or surprising Katie with something. I would say what I'm going to surprise her with, but she's watching right now. She took the baby out, so she's watching. I'm not going to say it. It's secret. You're going to love it. But that's what you better love it. Anyway, that's what it's about. That's what God gave us Jesus, and we give gifts in response to that, to mimic that. Again, everything pointing to Jesus. And, but that's just happiness. That's happiness. That's an emotion. Joy is more foundational than that. It is more powerful than that. Because that feeling of happiness can be robbed in a moment. You give the gift, and you get that look back like, oh, thank you. That'll take your happiness right away. I've experienced that. It's like, I spent 2 weeks researching that thing, and it's on eBay next. What? I worked on that. I spent time and effort, and I see it in the trash later. No, that is not. I want you to love it as much as I love giving it. See, your happiness can be taken away so quickly, but joy cannot. Joy cannot. The storms of life can come, and they can take your happiness. You may not have experienced that emotion of happiness in weeks or months, but if you've got Jesus, then the joy can never be taken from you. The joy is there, always present, if we're choosing Jesus over and over and over. That conversation that you always dread with that one person you constantly avoid, there can even be joy in the midst of the conversation. Why don't you do this? Introduce Jesus into the conversation. Watch it change. Watch it change. Watch them change. They may run from you now because they don't want to experience the joy you're spewing is really poisoning the negativity that they're giving off. It will change everything. Choose joy by choosing Jesus. And so here's the experiment. I want you to try it, all right? Try what I've been trying the last 7 days. I want you to choose joy this week by choosing Jesus. I guarantee you it's going to happen. Josh was right. You're going to find at some point this week that you're actually choosing happiness and trying to change your mood. Joy is bigger than mood. And even now, as I've even had this realization some days ago, still find myself choosing happiness, trying to shift my mood, and that's not what it's about. Choosing Jesus changes everything. Everything. And so that's what I want you to try this week. Choose Jesus. When that person makes that comment, when that thing happens, when that bomb drops in the middle of your life this week that you weren't even anticipating, in the moment, choose Jesus. And the joy will be there. I promise you. I promise you the joy will be there. Make it a habit in your life, a discipline in your life, like getting up every morning and working out. This is a spiritual discipline in your life of choosing Jesus every single day, and you're going to become, a spiritual bodybuilder. You're going to be able to bench press that joy like it's nothing all the time, and it will change your life. And because it's changed your life, it will change the destiny of everyone in your life. Everyone in your life. Begin to think as you say certain things, is this thing that's coming out of my mouth choosing Jesus? Is this thing coming out of my mouth truly joyful? Is that thought I just had about that person choosing Jesus? I guarantee you, I experienced that this week saying, nope, that was not choosing Jesus. That thing that I just thought, I'm gonna follow this rabbit hole for a minute. But then, no, I'm gonna get out of this thing. No, that's not choosing Jesus. That's choosing something else that's not Jesus. That's man, I wish I would have said, no, that's not choosing Jesus. I need to choose Jesus. And joy began to be reintroduced in a way that I had not experienced for some time, because I, in my own mind, had confused happiness with joy. And happiness is just surface level mess. Joy goes deep and changes you from the inside out. So choose Jesus. Maybe today some of you need to choose Jesus for the first time. You need to choose him. Maybe you've been confusing eternity and spiritual power with feeling good about coming to church. It's deeper than that. And you need to choose Jesus today. Choose him. Jesus, Son of God. He died so all your sins would be forgiven. He rose from the dead so you can live forever after you die. Choose Jesus today, and he will change your forever. So whether you need to choose Jesus today for the first time, or you need to begin to choose Jesus as I have been trying to experiment with, choosing Jesus moment by moment and watching joy shift your entire, not just countenance, but demeanor and life and motivation and the way you interact with other people, it begins with choosing Jesus. So choose Jesus in the same way these wise men did, and then you will experience, verse 10, rejoicing exceedingly with great joy.